What's up, guys? My name is Dean, or as most of you know me, Twisty, and let's get into wrapping up round 3 of the AFL season. We're going to jump straight to the ladder. The Swans, the Suns, and North Melbourne all undefeated with 3 wins apiece, whereas the other end of the spectrum, Fremantle, Carlton, and Brisbane all on 3 losses, and then there's 6 teams 2-1, 6 teams 1-2. So it's very interesting going into say round 4, because there are some teams that you wouldn't expect to be on the lower end of that spectrum, such as Fremantle. Richmond being 1 and 2 probably isn't much of a surprise given how they started the season, but you would have thought they did a little bit better. The Gold Coast 3-0, I think they have a very good draw. I think that they're almost confirmed to be in the finals if they win this coming week, just purely because of their draw. Hawthorn 2-1 there as well, and let's get stuck into some games, because there were some very good games on the weekend. On Friday night we had Port Adelaide absolutely smash Essendon to the tune of 61 points. Dixon kicked 3, Aaron Young kicked 3, Danaher kicked 2 for the Bombers. I didn't really watch too much of this game. I think I was live streaming the whole night, but Port Adelaide's definitely upped their game. They, especially against a side like Essendon, you have to perform, and you have to perform well. You can't go into it thinking, we're screwed here. But I think a win like this, even against an Essendon, can give you that confidence that, you trust in your game style and that you are able to play the way you'd like to play. So if Port Adelaide can take the same confidence and energy that they took into this game, into every game this season, they'll have a definite shot of finishing in that top 8. So that's the Friday night game. We move on to Saturday, and a bit of an upset here, probably the only real upset of the round in my opinion, and it was St Kilda defeating Collingwood. I didn't see this coming. It was 29-point win to the Saints. I was at Etihad Stadium this time, so I didn't really see much of this game either. But Joe Montagna, 40 disposals. It was St Kilda's 50th anniversary of their flag, or 60th anniversary maybe. Wait, well, they won in 66. Yeah? So it would have been the 50th anniversary of St Kilda winning the flag at the MCG by 1 point. They won this time by 29 points. Nick Riewoldt suffered a concussion, and he didn't play any further part in that game. So whether or not we see Riewoldt return this week, or if he has a week off because of that, is quite concerning because of his history with concussion. We've seen what it's done to Jonathan Brown, and how that eventually forced him out of the game. So I think as long as he doesn't have any more bad knocks throughout the season, he should be fine. But it could be a tragic end to such a great career if it does end up going that way. Pendlebury with 27 disposals and a couple of goals. Cloak kicked a couple of goals, so he's looking slightly better than he has in the last couple of weeks. And then over at Etihad Stadium, which I was there at the game, we saw the Tigers and the Crows. Adelaide getting over the line by 6 goals here. So it was only 36 points in the end. Oh, I thought it was more. With Edwards kicking the goal after the siren. Daniel Rioli kicked his first goal. He had 2 for the day. Taylor Walker, he is a special kid. He can kick the ball a very long way. He took a mark on the centre square and just thought, I'll have a crack from here. Eddie Betts, 3 goals as well. And Richard Douglas, I think, Sloan kicked a couple as well. But the Crows looked very good, and they exposed Richmond like they expose most sides. What they do is they play a very high defensive line. So as soon as the ball gets into their defensive 50, all of the forwards push up to around about the 60-metre line. So the entire ground is just covered in space. There's so much space out there for their players to just run into, and that's really where they got Richmond on the counter-attack. Richmond, they over-handballed for a lot of the second quarter, which really cost them and put them in such a bad spot. And I think it was just Adelaide's pressure that caused those over-handballs and like missing disposals and things like that. So I think for Richmond, the problems are there, but they are fixable. If they're skill errors, they are fixable. So they're not structural errors or anything. I think it's just poor attacking options, not lowering the eyes. I think there was a couple of errors made by a few players. So we probably had about 8. I think Hardwick said there was about 8 12-goal turnarounds that Richmond, could have had a shot at goal, and it went the other way to get an Adelaide goal, and that's pretty much the game. So you reverse 8 of those, Richmond win by about 3 or 4 goals. So Crows played very well, though. Richmond overpossessed too much. Cochin was outstanding. So go away, all you Cochin haters. He played a great game. It was probably one of the best games I've seen him play in a couple of years in terms of leadership and just making sure things went, went as best as they would go. But let's move along to the first of the derbies. I don't know where it is in Sydney. But the Battle of the Bridge, the Swans and the Giants, was at the SCG. 14-9-93 for the Swans. They ended up winning by 25 points. It was a lot closer than probably that margin suggests. The whole time the commentators were amping up, the Giants are going to win, but they were still 2-3 goals behind most of the day. They did have a lot of pressure on. They got within 2 goals with about 8 or so minutes to go. So it was pretty close then. The Swans just kicked away. Buddy, superb with 4 goals. Hanbury as well, 31 touches. They just look a very complete side, Sydney, and the Giants aren't that far off. They will be very close to playing finals, if not maybe getting a home final this season. But that is so long away, like so far away. They look very good. The Giants after that loss to Melbourne, they've sort of just got up off their shit and decided let's actually play some football. So on to the Gold Coast Suns taking on the Blues. They got home by 9 goals. Gary Ablett looked great again. But Aaron Hall, for me, is probably sitting on 9 Brownlow votes after 3 games. I reckon Ablett's on 6. Would have been Hall, Ablett, those first 3 votes, 2 votes for those first 3 games. Unless the umpires decide, maybe give him the Gaz. Tom Lynch kicked 4, and he's on top of the Coleman. We'll have a look at that in a sec. And Caswell, only 5 goals for the Blues, but a big positive for them was Wiedering. He was probably their best player. 26 disposals, just looked so complete. He's a ready-made player. I think it was a great decision to take him at pick 1. They probably would have got him at pick 2 anyway, because Brisbane was already committed to taking Shaki. But I've got Cole Jazzy in there, but I don't have his numbers. He probably took about 30-something disposals, but yeah. The Suns are going to be a very good side. They're 3-0 right now. It's going to be very difficult for anyone else to beat them, I reckon. Especially up at Metricon, will be a tough ask to beat the Suns. On to the Western Derby. We got the West Coast Eagles beat the Dockers by 33 points. Fremantle dropped to 0-3, and Sandilands is the big out with potentially a collapsed lung or punctured lung, courtesy of Nick Naitanui knees in his back, and that's really going to hurt the Dockers. I don't see them winning next week against North Melbourne, especially now that Sandilands is out. Goldstein will just monster them because he was fantastic on the weekend, but I think Sandilands is the key to Fremantle. A lot of their clearance work is reliant upon how good Sandilands is at actually getting that ball out, and once he's not there, it's going to make it very difficult for their midfielders to play if they're not getting such easy service out of the ruck. But 26 disposals there. Pavlich kicked 3 goals, even though he, and one pretty good one from the boundary line, I might add, as well. But yeah, Jack Darling looked pretty good as well. What am I saying? Jack Darling looked pretty good as well. He improved his stance in the forward line, started to lead up at the football, which is when he plays much better football, and he looks a better forward than he did for probably the first couple of rounds this season, and even the grand final last year. He just looked slow and sloppy, but he's definitely getting closer to his best. Jetta kicked a couple of goals, and they're getting closer. Take a look at the Coleman now. And Tom Lynch of the Gold Coast Suns, 13 goals, has the lead over Jared Waite and Buddy Franklin with 12. Brent Harvey, he kicked 6 on the weekend, put him up to 11. Josh Kennedy from the West Coast on 10. Jenkins with 10 as well. And then just, a couple of other players there with 9 and 8. Jack Martin with 9, I think is a little bit of a surprise for me anyway. And Hawkins got himself up there. I think he kicked 4. Should have kicked 10 on the weekend, Hawkins. But that's the Coleman after round 3. All right, game of the round. This one, I thought anyway. It was a very hard decision between this game and the next game. But North Melbourne versus Melbourne, extraordinarily high scoring down in Tasmania. A huge gust of wind turned the tide. North Melbourne up by 42 points in the first quarter. I turned it off because I thought this game is done and dusted. I turned it back on in the third quarter and it's game on. 136 to 135. That's a combined total of 267 points. Like, when do teams ever score that much? Never. Even if you had a team that won like 180 to 50, that's still only 230 points. This is probably the highest scoring game we'll see all season, but I love the high scoring games. It's incredible. There was so many lead changes and so much potential for the game to still be won because of how free-flowing it was. Brent Harvey kicked 6, Todd Goldstein kicked 5, and Jared Waite kicked 4. They were just outstanding in that forward line. Goldstein, 5 goals for a ruckman, and then you go forward as a ruckman. Like, it's just such a gun player. And I'm pretty sure, what's his name? The other guy. Max Gawn, he did better than Todd Goldstein in terms of Supercoach points. He beat him out by about 3 points, even though Goldstein kicked 5 goals. Because he was killing him in the hitouts too. But for Melbourne, wasted opportunities late in that last quarter, and it really cost them. There was a point after the siren that didn't count, but it was just because it was like slightly after. So originally the margin was 4 points. They reduced it back to 5 when they cancelled that point out. But gee, it was a good game to watch. And this next game was probably even better. I can't decide. I'm still deciding between the two which game was better. The Dogs and the Hawks. 3-point winners Hawthorn. James Sicily, the hero, kicking the goal to win the match. Dalhouse was outstanding. Sam Mitchell did okay. But the big story out of this one is Bob Murphy. Is he going to have an ACL injury? It looks that way. The scans will probably confirm that today. And that's probably the sad part about this is Rob Murphy's potential injury. I hope he plays on after this year. He's such a great player to watch, such a great bloke, and he just really wants to. I would like to see him be there next year if the Dogs, get close in the finals this season, and then I want to see him next year holding that Premiership Cup. I think it would just be amazing story. To see a bloke who's just done what he's been able to do and just make it so special. But Hawthorn, we gotta give them credit. Missing still Hodge and a couple of other players, and they still managed to get over the line. So this Hawthorn side are easily the Premiership favourites for good reason too, because they're just winning games without some of their best players. They're still missing Roughhead, and they're still missing Hodge, and they've still got a couple of outside runners that aren't there. But they're still managing to win. And I think that's where everyone confuses Hawthorn, because they're like, well, all their good players aren't there. Like, their good players have retired, or they're old, or they're too this, they're too that, but they just keep coming. Hawthorn just keeps coming and keeps doing what they need to do to win football games. And that's why I think they'll win the flag again. But I think Hawthorn is definitely on. I hate Hawthorn supporters, though. They're just so arrogant. Like, go get someone else to win. I hope the Dogs win the flag this year if Richmond doesn't. Anyway, the final game of the round, Geelong defeated Brisbane by a big margin. Hawkins should have kicked 10 and kicked 4 goals for. Dangerfield was just a miracle man in terms of Supercoach points if you had him on your team. And for Brisbane, wasn't really too much to look forward to. They didn't really do a whole lot of stuff right. Only scoring, the 56 points, only 7 goals, but if they can keep their scoring up, then I think, you'll definitely see some improvement in Brisbane, but I struggle to see them even beating Essendon this year, so it's going to be a very tough time. I've said it in just about every video. It's going to be a tough year for the Lions, but they're definitely not looking as good as they can be. Obviously, they're missing a lot of their key players, which really sucks for them, because over the last couple of seasons, they've recruited a lot of players who have played decent football before, but they just keep missing their A graders, especially Dane Beams, who's probably their best player, and he can't play. So tough night for the Lions. It's going to be even tougher. I've got my weekly video on Wednesday. I've got my season mode video coming up, and then on Friday I will do a round preview of what's to come this week. Anyway, thanks for watching. Leave a big thumbs up if you did enjoy today's video. Hopefully your team does something, and I'll see you guys later. That's a terrible video. What the fuck are you doing?